back to the HaneyBiz Project with host Mark Haney.
All right. Welcome back to the HaneyBiz Project, brought to you courtesy of Sun System Technology. I'm Mark Haney, and today I am joined by the ultra-successful real estate developer, Paul Petrovich. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good, Mark. Thank you for having me today.
You know, I looked at this at the date and the last time you were on the show, and it was exactly 1 year ago that you were on the HaneyBiz Project sharing your entrepreneurial story. Last time you came on, you were wearing a Make America Great Again hat. You didn't wear a hat today. What's up?
Well, I wore that hat in San Francisco once, and that was quite an experience on my way to a Giants game. And it wore out. Let's just say
it wore out. Yeah. So, I mean, America has changed a lot. Let's talk about what's happened in the last year. What do you think has changed in America, and maybe how does that relate to Sacramento and Paul Petrovich?
Well, people are so locked into their positions these days that they're not listening, and they're not taking into account the bigger picture. And I think politics has morphed into locally where the council members in this particular case, or in general, are seeking their own agenda and their own political fortunes, as opposed to previous generations of politicians that really had the public's heart and public's needs first. And if some of that bled into their success privately or in other ways, great. But now I'm seeing a complete lock-in of professional politics for personal gain, and it's very sad to see, and to the average person living their daily lives, they might not see that.
Well, I mean, so you are going to be on the show today for two segments. We're lucky to have you on for two segments. In the second segment, we're going to be talking about some news that is breaking here in Sacramento related to Paul Petrovich, related to development. Before we get into that, because that's got a political overtone to it, it can be considered a political hot topic, if you will. I want to hear the journey of Paul Petrovich, and I think a lot of people don't know you. We may see your signs if we pass one on the street because you've got retail development here in Sacramento and beyond. But talk to us about the journey for Paul Petrovich, that entrepreneurial journey.
As quick as I can. Raised by immigrant parents, only child to go out of 5 and only son to go to college. Started with the shirt on my back, lived out of my car, went into a commercial real estate 4 days after my last final at Davis. Only made $1,100 my first 18 months in the business.
Wow.
Was
Were you still living in the car while you were a commercial real estate guy?
Yes.
Wow.
I overstayed my welcome at my fraternity house at Davis, and then finally when school started again, they kicked me out.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I was living out of my car, and I had a nice old lady that lived next door. She used to iron my shirts. And so I was fixing my car on weekends, and I was driving around because I didn't know Sacramento from anywhere because I grew up in Southern California. Mm-hmm. So the recession was at its peak then. Jimmy Carter had just left office. Ronald Reagan had come in, and interest rates were 21%.
Yeah.
So when I showed up to work, they had fired the manager at the brokerage company I started. He says, "You don't have a job here." So I stood in the lobby for 4 hours, and he came back from lunch, and he finally said, "Fine, there's a desk, a phone, and a phone book. I'm not training you. Go for it." Well, I was afraid to go to the bathroom. They were going to change the locks.
Yeah.
So fast forward, recession breaks. I closed and earned $2 million in the following 2 years.
Wow. So from did you say $1,800 in a year?
$1,100 in 18 months.
Oh. And living out of it sounds like the Pursuit of Happiness movie. Did you ever see that movie?
Oh, yes, I did.
So you think about like the most inspiration. I mean, that's a story of inspiration, right? A guy, hey, he worked, I know you were a very good athlete. You go to UC Davis, you get out, no money, homeless, kind woman helping you with ironing your clothes. And you start in something like commercial real estate where there's no guarantees, I mean, typically, right? And
my Depression-era father, who landed on Normandy, said, "What are you doing? You have a college education and you're doing 100% commission. You didn't even need to go to college," he says to me. So by 1985, 86, I was fortunate enough to advance and close the Capital Bank of Commerce deal at 300 Capitol Mall for $85 million. I was 25 years old. The commission was $2.1 million.
Wow.
And in today's dollars, that's like selling a $240 million building with 3 times that commission, and things were looking great.
Dad was proud all of a sudden, huh? Dad's like, yes.
Dad was actually depressed. He was proud and depressed, but he had worked 43 years for the phone company, and he was making $20,000 a year, and he felt like in a quick instant that he had not taken enough risk in life to provide more for the family, because he was 100% about the family.
Wow. Okay, so this is a really interesting story because you're a philosophical guy, in my opinion, and try to find the deeper meaning. What does entrepreneurship mean to you? Because I get something out of that story that's super meaningful about the difference between breaking your back for the man versus taking a risk and building a dream like what you've done in Paul Petrovich Development.
Well, the whole thing to me was to break the cycle. It was, previous generations going back to Croatia and Sicily, were very poor. And, a lot of my cousins and other relatives were just working for corporations. And my father, of course, working for one corporation. And I knew to get ahead and to break the cycle, I had to take risks. So before I got married, before I took on debt and other responsibilities, I went for it. And I was working 80 hours a week. I was just going home, changing my clothes, going back to work. I was chasing everything down I possibly could. It was a lot of hustle, a lot of hard work, and a lot of hardship, and a lot of success. It's a ruthless business, commercial real estate. It is incredibly rough, and people play rough. And having been an athlete and a pitcher at that, in baseball, you kind of understand the rules of the game, and you're used, and you have the confidence to stand up to dealing with those sorts of things.
And what does that look like for Paul Petrovich when you stand up to deal with a tough customer? Besides the political end of things, I mean, it's still not easy. Even if we put the politics to the side, building buildings and bringing tenants in and developing them so they have more value and creating economic growth. That can't be easy.
Well, no, and it's really a belief in capitalism. It's a belief in that if you play by the rules and do the right things, and you're given a fair shot, and the playing field's level, that you can make your own breaks in life, that you can earn by working hard a position. And when you're a pitcher and you got the rock in your hand and you're standing on the bump, it's you against the batter, period. There's nobody else. And if you're going to stand out there for 9 innings and throw 150 pitches, you have to have the chutzpah to participate at that level and to apply the rules of the game, because baseball is all about rules as well.
Right.
And capitalism is what is being demonized right now. Being successful with capitalism as your playbook, for some reason, where in past generations people got looked upon as doing good things with capitalism, creating jobs and creating good for society. There's a misconception that if you're successful, that you're taking advantage of somebody. I don't live that way. I don't develop that way.
So what I'm seeing in Sacramento, and maybe I'm not seeing it the way that you are, so I'm really interested, but what I'm seeing is confidence beginning to show its face in the form of entrepreneurial seeds getting planted, right? People wanting to start businesses, talking about starting businesses, and entrepreneurship in general, it has a cool factor associated with it now where a lot of people think, I want to be an entrepreneur too. And the other side of that is it feels to me like society may be demonizing maybe large corporation, but you think they're demonizing entrepreneurship and small business as well? Absolutely.
If you're an individual that is an entrepreneur, that is very successful, they automatically attack you instead of the issues. That's an old trick of the book. When you can't win on the merits of the argument, attack the person. Okay. And that is what's going on now. That is the playbook. And that is what is keeping certain good things from happening, not just locally, but nationally.
Interesting that you say that. You see the new administration's brought in tax reform, right? How's that going to affect development in California? Because most of your development's here in the West Coast. How does it affect someone like you?
It's horrible.
Tax reform's horrible?
Well, it's horrible in the sense that those of us that are individuals that pay taxes, our effective tax rate went up and we don't get the same write-offs that we did before. When you can't take your California tax at 13.5% and write it off against your federal income tax, my tax rate just went way up.
Wow. I know you don't have that write-off, but you're in the situation where you need that state tax break. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just one of them. So, is it good for business overall, where corporations will have more money and give out dividends to their employees, which I applaud to the nth degree, and they're going to stimulate the economy, and people are going to be able to afford homes and to buy retail services? Absolutely. That's a broader view, and I take a broader view. If I have to pay more to stimulate the economy, as part of this process, so be it. But I would rather live in a thriving economy and see my kids and other people's kids and poverty get reduced and jobs come about and live in that society than losing a few more dollars in taxes. But as far as me personally, it's costing me, I think I'm going to be at the 63% of every dollar I make on ordinary income.
All right.
When this is all said and done.
All right. Well, I appreciate those thoughts. And when we come back, we're going to get some more of those thoughts. And Paul is not one of these guys that is going to hold back on sharing his opinion. It's one of the reasons I really respect you, is just calling it how it is. I would like to introduce you to my tax guy, Mr. Jason Cardinay, Galena, CLA. Maybe he can get that down to 62%. Jason, I'm going to see what I can do on this. He's a sponsor of the show as well. When we come back, talking to more about entrepreneurship, going to get the latest on the development on his Crocker Village Development Project. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, courtesy of Audi Rockland. This is the HaneyBiz Project.
Welcome back to Mark Haney, igniting the entrepreneurial revolution with the HaneyBiz Project.
Welcome back to the HaneyBiz Project, brought to you courtesy of Hub International. I'm Mark Haney, and I am rejoined by Paul Petrovich, a very, very successful real estate developer. And we're going to dive into, I'll call it the issue of the day. It's been the issue of years for you, Paul, the Crocker Village development. For those of Sacramento who don't know what that is, can you give us just a brief overview of what that project is and what you're running into?
Second largest infill development in Sacramento, one of the dirtiest toxic pits in America. Spent 14 years and $50 million hauling 20-mile-long train full of toxins to Utah and dumped it in a rubber pit.
It's over by Sac City and Hughes Stadium, right?
Yes,
is it over
correct.
there by the railroad?
Correct. Yeah. Went through 5 years of entitlements, 230 community meetings to obtain my entitlements in 2010. We've pumped over 1 billion gallons of groundwater to clean up the plume that was left behind by the Western Pacific and the Union Pacific. Now have put $20 million worth of roads and infrastructure in. And there are now 100 residents living in Crocker Village in the brownstones and single-family homes there, with another 200 homes yet to be built.
Let me try to make sure I understand this correctly. You've put it's your money. Paul Petrovich money has gone into.
I have no partners.
Yeah,
it's all my money.
$20 million.
50 to clean it. 20 more in infrastructure.
Okay, so here it is. You've got this huge investment plus buying the land.
Yes.
And now. What
plus
happens?
the entitlements.
Okay. So
that was $1.5 million.
The number you just gave, was that $100 million? I mean, what do you got into it?
Thereabouts.
Okay.
I mean, so I got the approvals. In the approvals is the right to build a 259,000 square foot shopping center. Also in those approvals are permitted uses that require conditions, meaning if you're going to put in certain types of uses, the city wants to weigh in on how it looks, how it's regulated, how many hours, just design of it, so forth. Yeah. But it's a permitted use.
Right.
Included in the list of, say, 100 uses that were allowed under the zoning, which was part of the grand bargain for me cleaning up the property, was a gas station.
Okay.
So Sacramento has never turned down a gas station in its history.
So you get to put in a gas station if you clean up the property?
No.
Oh.
It was baked into my zoning.
Okay.
I had to clean up the property in order to develop anything.
Gotcha.
So I cleaned it all up to residential standards. I didn't bury anything under the developable part of the property. It was a textbook case of cleanup, and DTSC was very proud, Department of Toxic Substance Control, of what happened there. So fast forward, I finally get a lease signed with Safeway. I start attracting other tenants. I'm about to start construction. on 107,000 square feet of the first phase of the shopping center, and I submit my application for a conditional use permit for the gas station to obtain my approvals, my conditions of how it's going to operate. Went through that process, took about 9 months, 10 months, took 14 months, got to the Planning Commission and got approval. 8-3. Should have ended there. Jay Chenier, in collaboration as a lifetime member of the Sierra Curtis Neighborhood Association that only represents about 9% of all of Curtis Park, orchestrated an appeal, filed an appeal with the city, where he was going to be the judge, along with the rest of the council.
So he's part of the city council. The city council is against this.
Well, let me tell you how it went.
Sorry.
So then I finally get to the hearing. There's all kinds of trouble and misinformation being stirred up. We get to the hearing, and I get not a review of my conditions based upon the small issues that they filed their appeal on. Council wouldn't even engage me in discussing conditions and took away my property rights and actually denied my use permit, which is for permitted use.
Right.
All they were supposed to do was address conditions.
So you're $100 million in, you've got approvals, and now all of a sudden the Sacramento City Council turns you down. Then let's keep fast forwarding along.
So then I went ahead and I knew something was wrong. So we went ahead and filed a writ. And a writ is different than a tort. A writ is where you ask a judge to review the record, just the written material. And a tort is where you seek damages and you can do investigation, you can take subpoenas, you issue subpoenas and have depositions. And that's for damages. The writ is just asking the judge to review what happened and say whether it was right or wrong. I had to be in court 12 times fighting the city because they kept destroying evidence, despite the fact that they were under order not to do so, despite the fact that their own city policy says they're not supposed to. So we had to continue to dig and dig and dig for more information. And lo and behold, there was an inordinate amount of information where Jay Chenier was taking the president of SCNA and giving him talking points and having him over his house for dinner when he's supposed to be acting as a third-party judge, just like a Superior Court judge, and coaching him on how to go talk to the other council members to get their vote against the project. Okay. Completely unlawful, illegal, and violated my constitutional rights. And one more thing, Mark, before you go.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to cut you off. Just
in
keep
the
it rolling.
final draw of information, we were able to obtain a script that was literally written the night before and circulated that outlined exactly how the hearing was going to go, exactly what the motion was going to be by Jay Chenier, that Councilman Hansen was going to second it, and how the vote was going to go. All of that was done before one piece of evidence had been presented at what was supposed to be a court setting.
So keeping it fast forwarding along, where are we at today?
So then the judge finally issued his ruling, and the ruling found that Jay Chenier was in fact guilty and broke the law and should have recused himself from the hearing.
Okay.
And we have all the evidence that the other council members were in lockstep and were saying they're going to vote however he votes. Okay? And we have even more damaging information on that as well that's going to be coming out. So now, and all the judge did, the judge could have said, you're going to issue that conditional use permit. He could have done that. He didn't. All he said is, give the man a fair hearing, and Chenier, you're out of the room. What does the council do? They appeal it to put it on ice for up to 2 years, 2.5 years. Meanwhile, the city's losing $10,000 a day in property tax and sales tax, which amounts to $7.4 million in lost tax revenue already. They are losing out on $32 million of impact fees. And more importantly, Safeway had agreed to give Oak Park a dignified hand up with $26.50 on average hourly rate union jobs, which would have amounted to already a $14 million in salaries and benefits to the most impoverished community we have.
Well, I think everybody can agree. I always think, like, what can we do together in order to win? And in this case, you've put in $100 million, and, it has to have been one of the most stressful times of your life. Whenever you start having to hire attorneys to fight stuff.
Free attorneys.
Wow. Whenever that happens, I mean, it can be it almost just feels, life's too short to be doing that in most cases. Now, let me ask you this. So now it's sitting here, and we're hearing one side of the story, and the business side of the story, which is this was a business show. But if there was somebody on the other side that would defend why not to do the project, or maybe give the other side, who would that be, and what would they say? Just in short form, what's a defense for this? I mean, because I don't see one on their side.
There isn't one. If you want to know what they've been saying, is that I was too rude to them, and therefore, they attacked the person, not the issue, and that I didn't talk nicely enough to Jay Chenier. And he even said in the deliberation at the council, actions have consequences, meaning what I said to him. And it was, I don't treat politicians any differently than I treat somebody on the street. They're representing us. I don't bow down to them. They are supposed to do what's right by the people. And so, excuse me if I didn't kiss somebody's ring.
Yeah.
That's not how I was raised. That's not how it's supposed to work.
Well, you compare this. Okay, this is obviously a challenging situation. It's ongoing, and it's unresolved at this stage. But this show is about winning, right? So I guess in entrepreneurship, we always know that there's these rocky roads. Two questions. One, how does this stack up in terms of setbacks in your life and low points or rockiness in your life? And then also, I would like to know, obviously you had some win stories. We heard about one in the beginning where you got your first big break because of the huge sale. But so how does this one stack up? And give us a quick win story so we can I want to leave our listenership thinking, you know what, it's not always easy, but in the end, good things happen. So help us come to that. Give us a happy ending here.
Well, the happy ending is the rest of my life. The number of cities and governments and people that are on my side on my other projects is incredibly heartwarming. I've built 58 projects totaling $1 billion of development. And at last count, that created 20,000 jobs, permanent jobs.
Wow.
Tens of millions of dollars of tax revenue that goes to society. And what I do is I build in areas that need help. I'm about to break ground on a grocery outlet in North Sacramento where there's been a food desert for 60 years. People cannot find quality groceries, fresh groceries, at affordable prices. And I'm doing it for no profit.
Yeah, you're doing it in an area where people just don't have any money.
I walk into that community, District 2, with Alan Warren, and it's an entirely different thing. I go to Seaside, where I've started to put other efforts outside the area. I'm building a $500 million mixed-use project right in front of Cal State University, Monterey Bay. There are students that are homeless, digging holes in sand, that go to the college because there's not enough housing, putting their belongings in the hole and sleeping on top of it. So I'm going to build 1,000-bed student housing. These things are welcome. People are just like, wow, and I'm considered a person that gets things done.
Well, every one of those jobs that you've created and helped create, those are win stories. Every time somebody is able to go from no job to a job, there's a win story in there, and it doesn't happen unless somebody takes a risk and starts a business, locates it somewhere where somebody can show up for work. And just thinking, just as we close out, we only have a minute left. You said something that you've had people by your side helping that. And I always think that in life, nobody wins alone. We may have individual victories if we're out there on the mound throwing fastballs, but nobody really builds a happy, successful life all by themselves. Who has stood by your side in building this exceptional life that you've created?
Well, I'm going to be corny here, really corny. I've been married 32 years. And I'm telling you, I have got the best wife in the world, and I have 3 wonderful adult children now, and they all came out great. And I could not be happier about that. That's what counts. And my wife balances me out. When I come home and somebody's kicked me where, she picks me up and she puts it in perspective in one sentence. And all of a sudden, I'm not dwelling on it as much. And without her, I'd be wadded up in a corner somewhere. It would be that bad. So it's family. It's all about family. And that's who I fight for. Every time somebody comes at me, I got my family on my shoulder because I don't have any financial partners. And it's a personal affront to them attacking them. Yeah. And that's why I stand up tall and I fight back. I
love it, Paul. I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing this very delicate, controversial story, and all of what you do for Sacramento and development and the jobs. And I couldn't respect you more for the way you take risk and you're family oriented, which is, I feel like I'm built that way as much as anybody as well. I've also been married about 32 years. So in some ways we have a few things in common. And I want to thank you very much for coming on the show again. When we return, I will bring back on my daughter. She's a real estate guru here in South Placer with like 50 agents. She knows a ton about residential real estate, but we're going to be talking about what it's like to be an entrepreneur who's 31 years old and trying to make it in today's world. Join the revolution at HaneyBiz.com, courtesy of the Entrepreneurs Organization of Sacramento and law firm Greenberg Trorg. This is the HaneyBiz Project.